Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhya Radhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Soda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Soda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Soda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramu 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajakacharya Astatur Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajakacharya Astatur Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. And all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 24. Te maya pe takila chapale ribake. Te maya ape takila chapale ribake. Dante drita kridanake nuvartini. Dante drita kridanake nuvartini. Chakru kripam yadyapi tulya darshana. Shushru shamane munayol pabasini. Te maya pe takila chapale rabake. Dante drita kridana ke nuvartani. Chakru kripam yadyapi tulya darshana. Shushru shamane munayo pabasani. Please chant. Maya Dante drita kridana ke nuvartani. Chakru kripam yadyapi tulya darshana. Shushu shamane munayol pavatapani. Te maya patea. Anyone else would like to try? No? Ladies, please. No board. Oh, okay. Nobody knows how to turn it on, I guess, huh? Okay. So, I'll just run through the synonyms. Te, they. Mai, unto me. Apeta, not having undergone. Akila, all kinds of. Chapale, proclivities. Arbake, unto a boy. Dante, having controlled the senses. adrita kri danake, without being accustomed to sporting habits, anuvartini, obedient, chakru, did bestow, kripam, causeless mercy, yadyapi, although, tulya darshanaha, impartial by nature, shushru shamane, unto the faithful, munaya, the Muni followers of the Vedanta, ulpa basini, one who does not speak more than required. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. So allow me to stop for just a moment so that those of you, or those of us who have come new to this particular chapter or even verse, knows who is speaking. So Narada Muni is explaining now to Vyasadeva, his disciple, how he became ever increasingly Krishna conscious from the very beginning. This is very important. In other words, he's giving a little biography of, and he's actually telling something to us about how we can improve or increase or expedite our advancement by following this incredibly important instruction. Continuing. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty, and I did not speak more than required. Sorry. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, all the Vedas are searching after me. Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya says that in the Vedas, the subject matters are only three, namely to establish the relation of the living entities with the personality of Godhead, perform the relative duties in devotional service, and thus achieve the ultimate goal, back to Godhead. As such, the Vedanta Vadis, or the followers of the Vedanta, indicate the pure devotees of the personality of Godhead. Such Vedanta Vadis, or the Bhakti Vedantas, are impartial in distributing the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. To them, no one is enemy or friend. No one is educated or uneducated. No one is especially favorable, and no one is unfavorable. And why is that? Because what they see is soul and supersoul. One who merely sees the body and its external characteristics and its position or status in society will, yes, he will see someone as an enemy if he's trying to take away his position, or a friend if he's promoting his position. No one is educated or uneducated. The only persons who are knowledgeable or who are considered educated are those who are striving to love God or who already has achieved love of God. So external material education is meaningless to a person who is a pure devotee of the Lord. No one is especially favorable and no one is unfavorable. The Bhakti Vedantas see that the people in general are wasting time in false, sensuous things. Their business is to get the ignorant mass of people to reestablish the lost relationship with the personality of Godhead. By such endeavor, even the most forgotten soul is roused up to the sense of spiritual life, and thus being initiated by the Bhakti Vedantas, the people in general gradually progress on the path of transcendental realization. So the Vedanta Vadis initiated the boy even before he became self-controlled and was detached from childish sporting, etc. But before the initiation, he, the boy, became more and more advanced in discipline, which is very essential for one who wishes to make progress in the line. In the system of Varnashram Dharma, which is the beginning of actual human life, small boys after 5 years of age are sent to become brahmacharis at the Guru's ashram, where these things are systematically taught to every boy, be he a king's son or the son of an ordinary citizen. The training was compulsory not only to create good citizens of the state, but also, and most important, to prepare the boy's future life for spiritual realization. The irresponsible life of sense enjoyment, as is going on here today, was unknown to the children of the followers of the Varnashram system. A boy was even injected with spiritual acumen before being placed by the father in the womb of the mother. Both the father and the mother were responsible for the boy's success in being liberated from the material bondage. How this was the main point of life, that the father and mother were responsible for the boy's success in being liberated from the material bondage, not for being a winner of the Academy Awards, not for being a winner of the Heisman Trophy in the football field, not for being a winner of the NAACP Big Basketball Award. This was not what they were trained for. They didn't care about those things because those things were temporary, here today, gone tomorrow. That is the process of successful family planning. How different it is from today's family planning. Quite often, there isn't any planning. Everything just happens erratically and often unpredictably and unplanned. It is to beget children for complete perfection. That was the ancient concept. Without being self-controlled, without being disciplined, and without being fully obedient, no one can become successful in following the instructions of the spiritual master. I'll reread that because that's so important. Most of us have spiritual masters. And what Narada is stating here is here is the basis of our success or failure. Without being self-controlled, without being disciplined, and without being fully obedient, no one can become successful in following the instructions of the spiritual master, and without doing so, no one is able to go back to Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmuritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurube Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So, there's a lot of material here. There's enough material here in just this purport and translation to enable me and probably many of my godbrothers to speak for one whole year. Yeah, a year, and maybe more. It's just chock full of information that you can expound upon unlimitedly. So I will take up, I'm going to go from the translation. Before I do, I would like to clarify something that some devotees may not know. I know I didn't know this for many years, until finally I did a little bit of research. Now, when Srila Prabhupada, as it occurs in those of you who have your little phones, as it was mentioned in the previous verse, Srila Prabhupada talks about millennium. Now, what does millennium mean? What does millennium mean? Speak. Use 1,000 years, right. And that's what generally it is taken to mean. And anyone who does not know Srila Prabhupada's meaning, sometimes he has his own definitions, and we need to know them, otherwise we don't understand the purport. This is one of them. Millennium, Prabhupada gives two definitions too. That doesn't mean we should forget the general meaning, the dictionary meaning of millennium, meaning, as you said, 1,000 years. Don't forget that. We shouldn't start thinking that, yes, millennium is meaning, as I will define what Srila Prabhupada means. Srila Prabhupada often refers to a millennium as the 4 yugas, or a complete cycle of the 4 yugas, meaning Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, which equals 4,320,000 years, quite a bit more than 1,000 years. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is referring to. And you have to stop and think, is he referring to that? Or he sometimes, fewer times, refers to a millennium as being a kalpa, or half a kalpa, meaning a day of Brahma. And if you look in the Bhagavad Gita, you will see that Srila Prabhupada makes the point that our Lord Sri Krishna appears once in every day of Brahma, or in every millennium, he says. So what we have there is 1,000 revolutions of the 4 yugas. So the principle of 1,000 is there, but it's being used as slightly different. 1,000 revolutions, that means Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga occur 1,000 times, which equals 4,320,000,000 years. That's a day of Brahma. And a night of Brahma is the same, 4,320,000,000 years. So Brahma is a great big sleeper. When he takes his rest, nobody can top him. At least I haven't heard any saint or incarnation who can sleep more than 4,320,000,000 years. Anyway, he needs it for all the work he does. He's a big-time creator. I mean, look at all these universes that he sets in motion under the direction of Lord Sri Krishna, and having to deal with so many incompetents, so many offenders. Therefore, he gets a lot of time off, and then again, when he wakes up, everything begins. So, is it clear? Just shake your head. If anyone doesn't understand fully, raise your hand. I'll re-explain it. This is important because we're going to encounter throughout our readings this word millennium, and we need to stop and say, does Srila Prabhupada mean 1,000 years? 4,320,000 years, or 4,320,000,000 years? Okay? Any question? No doubts? Okay. Therefore, I feel completely cleansed from manifesting, because I went for so many years, I just couldn't figure it out. 1,000, but it doesn't sound like 1,000 years. It seems like 1,000,000. I was going back and forth in my mind. I couldn't figure it out. But anyway, it's all been figured out now, and I trust that everyone will go through it. So now, going into translation, I'm trying to take it apart. It has so many wonderful points. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me, Narada Muni, with their causeless mercy. How did they bless him? They were filled with virtue. They were filled with love of God. They were filled with love of all beings. They were filled with devotional love, submissive love for the Lord. That is their mentality. That was their mood. That was their feeling. They don't have to speak even. Just manifesting their holy presence. We found that when Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada would sit for a few minutes and just with a smile or a serious gaze, he didn't have to speak. We were feeling the rays of enchantment that were manifesting from Srila Prabhupada's face, his smile, his body, and therefore just being in his holy presence gave us great delight, and no one became restless or upset or anxious or impatient. You just sat there in his holy presence. Of course, when he opened his mouth, then we even got 100 times more. It was so wonderful. So this is what is meant by, he blessed me with their causeless mercy. Their vibrations were just literally engulfing him, swallowing him, penetrating him, and enlivening him, uplifting him, and enriching him. Okay? That's what is meant by this. Bless me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. So let's talk about that for just a few seconds. When you're a boy, from the time at least you're 5, 6 years old, you're taught to be a leader. You're taught to be the best. So we know even at 5 years old, the kids, they learn football and baseball and basketball. And on the school, we used to play punch ball. And you'd come home and your mother and father would say, well, how'd you do today? Well, I struck out twice, but I got one single base, you know. So if your parents were a real sports fanatic, they didn't care that much. But if you came and you said, hey, Mom, I hit 2 home runs, they would say, really? Did you win? Yeah, we won. So parents would become very enkindled. They're very uplifted, very enlivened when the kid won, because they identified themselves with their kids, because the children were offsprings of their own body, and when they identify with their own body, they identify with all things which are connected with, related to, and manifesting their bodies. So, in other words, blood relation. So therefore, parents would be very happy. This is bodily concept of life. The very opposite of what is being talked about in this marvelous purport. In this marvelous purport, what is being talked about is not being a leader on the sports field, but rather being a leader in spiritual life, which means, ironically, being the humblest of the humble. Yeah, leader generally means top, big, 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 big. But big in spiritual life means low, 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 low. I'm nothing. I'm incompetent. I'm valueless. I'm worthless. Even though you may have tremendous smarts, you may have tremendous abilities. So how do you reconcile those two? Ability and person calling himself, I have no ability. I'm worthless. What does that mean? It means that he does not identify himself with the results. He gives or ascribes all those results to the Supreme Lord, and in effect says, whatever good results are flowing from me, whatever good results are coming from me, whatever good results are shining from me, are the results of Krishna's grace. Yes, Krishna's grace is manifesting that. Therefore, I'm nothing. Without Krishna, I'm incompetent, incapable, a nobody, a nothing. But with the support, with the help, with the aid, with the injection of Krishna's power, then alone I can become something. But it all belongs to Krishna. And the devotee learns the art of not identifying himself with the results, but rather gives, ascribes all the results to Krishna. And in that way, he never gets proud. He doesn't think he's wonderful, vain, egotistical. He doesn't have those feelings because he never feels he's the doer. Even if he has a big, beautiful car, it's Krishna's car. He has a big, beautiful home, with 100 rooms. Like George Harrison, I think he had 120 rooms. really. And just he and his wife and his son were living there. So, but you don't identify yourself. This is not my house. This house belongs to Krishna. And he can take it away from me in a moment, in a second. So, and if he does that, you don't grieve, you don't lament, you don't moan, because you never felt it was yours anyway. It's only when we feel it's ours and it's taken away and it's now destroying, it's knocking down our false sense of identity of being Mr. or Miss Big, that's when it hurts. So the real thing is, yes, you can be as big, as great, as wonderful, as glorious as you like, but only as a love offering for Krishna. And always ascribing the result to Krishna. And when we do that, we are completely free of this, as I just said, vanity and false pride, and we give all glory, all praise, all honor to Krishna. That is how we become Krishna conscious. We become Krishna conscious by thinking of his greatness and thinking, in effect, next to Krishna, we're tiny. In the material world, we may be next to somebody else and they may be bigger in the material world, but it's totally meaningless. Because what happens in the material world is temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow. So his greaterness will eventually be knocked down and there will be nothingness. So if there's nothingness, then it's a temporary position. It's a temporary status. Many, big actors, they get, all these awards, and then they get older. We don't hear from them again. And then what happens is they become depressed, and they have to take drugs to try to stay balanced, or they take alcohol. They don't have the crowd roaring, the crowd yelling, the crowd applauding. So that's a wonderful thing that Srila Prabhupada has given us, to not worry about whether we're being applauded, whether we're being praised, whether we're being honored, whether we're being celebrated. And even if we are, the first thing that has to come into our mind, this belongs to Krishna. And if we say that many times, we will be free of the curse of the pride, of that kind of pride. And it is pride which kills us, because once we become very proud, we think we're superior to others. And when we think we're superior to others, we may begin to speak in a condescending way to another person. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, don't you have any intelligence? Now the spiritual master can speak that way. Prabhupada used to always say, fool, rascal, dummy. He would talk like that. That was to help us to acquire and to cultivate humility. Because we're thinking, I'm doing so much wonderful service for Prabhupada. Look at what I've done. I distributed this 200 books today. Therefore, I'm sure he's just looking up to me. In fact, Prabhupada's going to dream about me tonight. Yeah, right. So, but a devotee who is actually making real, genuine, solid progress, he will always be thinking all those books were the result of my spiritual master's mercy, his blessings. As it says, by the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, let me offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. I'll move on to the next sentence. Okay, I've already taken up the why to the Bhakti Vedantas. No one is an enemy or a friend. No one is educated or uneducated, because such persons see not the external, but the internal. They are experiencing themselves as souls, and in advanced stages they are seeing and experiencing the Supreme Lord, And consequently, they see the reality. When we don't see the reality, then we see all this duality. He's good, he's bad, he's smart, he's dumb, he's my enemy, he's my friend. So the Bhaktivedantas see that the people in general are wasting their time in false, sensuous things. Their business is to get the ignorant mass of people to reestablish the lost relationship with the personality of Godhead. By such endeavor, even the most forgotten soul is roused up to the sense of spiritual life. That's a nice way of putting it. By such endeavor, what is that endeavor? The different practices that we undertake in spiritual life. We're chanting the name. We're hearing the Bhagavatam. We're associating with devotees. We're worshiping the Lord. Living in a holy dham. We're praying to the Lord. We're having friendly association with the Lord. We see the Lord every day. We smile at his beautiful looks, especially the dressing today. Oh, the dressing was super. I mean, with the gold, blending with the gold. I mean, I was literally spellbound for a few moments. Finally, I found out it was Bhagavat Kripa who did Rukmini and Dwarkadish. I mean, years ago, I could never imagine that he could do that. Because basically, he was a kind of a fistic. He was one of our guards out there. And you didn't want to mess with him. You didn't want to talk bad, or you didn't want to do anything suspicious, because he would get right on it. He wasn't afraid. And this is rather delicate type of work. It's not easy. Those of you who dress the deities, you know you have to handle the jewelry, you have to handle the crown in such a way. You can't just plunk it down on the head, you know. It doesn't work that way. So he did such a marvelous, wonderful job. I know that we congratulate some of our other servants, such as the cook and the book distributors. But those persons who are dressing the deities, to me, that's a home run. And there's nothing greater or higher or better than that. Because when we look at the deities and we become enlivened, we become refreshed, we become uplifted, it gives us an impetus to want to get out and serve them, express our love to them, and try our best to enable others to feel what we're feeling, so that they can know, they can learn, they can feel and experience genuine happiness. So now one last point. We're not at 15 yet. So the Vedantavadis initiated the boy, meaning Narada Muni, even before he became self-controlled and was detached from childish sporting, etc. So Narada Muni was in their company. He was with them. He was feeling their holy vibrations. And they were talking all about the pastimes of Krishna. So in effect, although there may be no formal initiation, when you're hearing about Krishna in such an advantageous way, glorifying him, being amazed by him, throwing yourself in submission at the feet of the Lord, when you're hearing all this, as far as he was, this is initiation. What is initiation? It's not only vowing that I'm going to chant 16 rounds and practice 4 regular principles, but in this case, he was getting all that because those Bhaktivedantas were perfect personifications of just that. They did everything right. They did everything with love. They did everything in surrender. So the boy became more and more advanced in discipline, which is very essential for one who wishes to make progress in the line. In the system of Varnashram Dharma, which is the beginning of actual human life, small boys after 5 years of age are sent to become brahmacharis. Brahmachari means that you learn to control your senses. And until they are married, they do not have any sexual activity, unlike in the Western world. In the Western world, the ideal is that you have sexual intercourse as soon as possible. And the sooner, the better, because that's when all your friends praise you. They glorify you. Wow, you had sex with, you're only 14 years old. Really? So this is the most distorted, horrible training that a young boy can get, because he begins to, at that age, see a female as an object of sexual activity. You can't see her, like you're supposed to see like his mother. How can I see her as my mother when the ideal is to see her as a object of sexual enjoyment? So this is so horrible, and most young men find it difficult, trying to sometimes talking to a woman and separating the two. But in this kind of philosophy, that's why it's so important that a young man learn that the real and higher and greatest goal is to serve Krishna, love Krishna, adore Krishna, glorify Krishna, and ultimately go back home, back to Krishna. That's what is and if that's the ideal, then the young man, also this is for girls now, since women have been liberated into madness, the result is that it used to be just young men. But now, with liberation in 1960, even the girls are competing. Hey, I went out with this guy. I got the football leader. I got the swimming, the champion of the swimming team. They're talking like this. Even the mothers are saying, "Well, who are you going out with on Saturday night?" They say. I wrote a play. It got very high rankings in national, and it was all about a young girl. It was called Wednesday Night. And Wednesday night was an important night because that was the night that they got a telephone call from some guy, ideally or hopefully, for the Saturday night date. So the mother was always pestering the daughter on Wednesday night. She says, how come nobody's calling you? What did you do wrong? That you don't wear the right clothes? You don't put on the right lipstick? What are you doing wrong? You're not using the right deodorant or something? Why is nobody calling you? So the poor girl was having a nervous breakdown. That's what it was about. She practically goes crazy near the end, and it was a realistic projection of what goes on. So, the irresponsible life of sense enjoyment was unknown, here it is, to the children of the followers of the Von Ashram system. A boy was even in, this is interesting, the language that Prabhupada uses, I'll try my best to explain it. A boy was even injected with spiritual acumen before being placed by the father in the womb of the mother. So what does that mean? We have to know what the word acumen means. Acumen means to be very smart. It means to be very insightful. You see things beyond the superficial. You go deep into things. That's what acumen means. So Prabhupada is using this word. A boy was even injected with spiritual smarts. Spiritual smarts is all that I have been speaking about. Prabhupada has been speaking about. What is spiritual smarts? To know the real, true, higher goal of life. That's spiritual smarts, spiritual acumen. So what happens, of course, is for those kinds of parents who know the Vedic life and know what they're supposed to do, before having sexual intercourse to have a child, they will chant, I think it's 51 rounds. Is that right amount, or is it higher? Yeah, 51 rounds of japa. And they may chant it together. And in that way, they draw to themselves such spiritual vibration. They get the grace of Krishna, and higher souls that are waiting to take birth will be attracted to them. And in that case, what will happen is that soul will enter into the semen of the male. And when the sexual intercourse takes place, that soul will be injected into the uterus of the female. And so it will be not just an ordinary child that is created sometimes out of just sensual desire, but it will be a child that is highly advanced already spiritually. And the parents that he has, who are very spiritual, will be the means by which that child will be awakened, be aroused, steered into spiritual life to get this type of education. So, is that clear? That the parents, they chant 51 rounds. They're fully saturated and filled with spiritual vibes. They attract a soul which is highly elevated, that goes to the male, and the male injects into the female. And what happens is you get a person like Narada Muni, or you get a person like Vyasadeva. So a boy was, I said that. Both the father and the mother were responsible for the boy's success in being liberated from material bondage. That is the process of successful family planning. It is to beget children for complete perfection. Love of God, love of the lotus feet of Krishna, love of service to Krishna. Every person, we all have to be aspiring to be in the mood of service. Not I will do my service at 10 o'clock, but if, for example, you see a piece of trash paper just outside on the steps and you don't particularly like the idea, when the door is open, the deities have to see that trash, or on a higher level, the deities everywhere. So devotee who is in the mood of devotional loving service doesn't wait for so-and-so, Prabhu over here, to pick up the paper an hour later. He picks it up immediately, walks over to the trash can and drops it in. He's not lazy. Laziness is one of the characteristics of today, Kali Yuga. So the point is this: devotional loving service mentality or mood is an ongoing mood. It lasts throughout the day, and if one is thinking of Krishna, depending on Krishna, glorifying Krishna, thanking Krishna always for the mercy that we have received, which is so wonderful. Look at us all here together. Nobody's dropping a bomb, okay? Nobody's opening up the door and shouting, "Hey, stupid!" Nobody's saying anything like that. Peaceful, loving, quiet, joyful. Look, everybody's sitting. Nobody's got the shakes. Nobody's looking up. Maybe there's a bomb going to fall. Everybody, this is Prabhupada's mercy. This is Krishna's mercy. This is the result of the Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta, by the way, Vedas means knowledge. Vedanta means the highest knowledge. This is the result of absorbing, and how fortunate we all are to get this knowledge. We should cherish it. We should treasure it. We should embrace it. We should absorb it. We should become completely one with it, and in so doing, give it out everywhere as often and as often as we can. And if we continue all to do that, we will all be assisting each other. Because if I see you giving out a book, talking to somebody, preaching or something, or I want to do it also. So you take me out of my cocoon of laziness and bring me into what Srila Prabhupada calls rousing me into a position of alertness, eager readiness, and surrender to the Supreme Lord. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Are there any quick questions? I'll take one question. Anybody? Comment? Quick comment? Sorry, I didn't give you much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam.